With all these men getting fired and accused of sexual harassment, the phrase toxic masculinity is in the air, and everything from sexual assault to mass shootings. But what is toxic masculinity? Masculinity refers to performed behaviors that have been attributed to manhood. Toxic refers to a subset of violent, destructive, or oppressive behaviors performed in an attempt to live up to a mythological idea of masculinity. Think Batman, for example. He's intelligent, self-sacrificing, and dedicated to justice. Great! But some of his behavior is toxic. His aggression, emotional detachment, and misogynistic control over women are all forms of toxic masculinity. We're not saying that men are toxic, but their behavior can be. Everyone is capable of these behaviors. One reason this exists is because we have a problem with the cultural definition of what a real man is. Manhood is framed in opposition to womanhood. So a toxic view of masculinity sees anything feminine as a threat to masculinity. Boys are taught at a young age to be aggressive, competitive, and strong at all costs. We see this played out whenever a boy is bullied for being weak because they were crying or expressing emotion. So toxically masculine behavior occurs when men feel they need to defend or assert this unhealthy idea of masculinity. This can mean doubling down on toxic behavior, such as denial of feelings, verbal abuse, and physical or sexual violence.
Are you crazy? Don't talk about my mother!
In our patriarchal society, masculinity is valued over femininity. Masculine-presenting people are encouraged to show domination over women and feminine-presenting people. This can be displayed in the form of sexual objectification, possessiveness, and predatory behavior. There's also a dangerous sense of entitlement that comes from the narrative saying that the more masculine you are, the more entitled you are to respect, power, a job, and sex. When women disagree or say no, aggression, anger, or violence can follow because they're denied what is owed to this masculine sense of power. This toxic sense of entitlement contributes to the rampant rape culture in this country. Toxic masculinity can also lead to homophobia because the attraction to men is considered feminine and therefore a threat to straight masculinity. Transphobia towards trans women occurs when they are wrongly perceived as men pretending to be women. Trans women, especially trans women of color, are more likely to experience violence, often from the men who date them and feel their straight masculinity was diminished because they were with a man. Trans men also suffer from the perception of diluting masculinity by being women pretending to be men. It can also impact men who date trans people, because other men might shame them for dating a trans person. Lesbians and bisexual women can also be victims of toxic outlash for denying men their entitlement to women's bodies and attention. Toxic masculinity can also appear within the LGBT community. Shorthand like mask for mask or no femmes can be exclusionary to more feminine-presenting gay men. It's okay to be attracted to certain people, but don't devalue others in the process. Within lesbian and queer women's spaces, butch or more masculine-presenting women can perform toxic behavior if their expressions of masculinity are possessive or abusive to their partners. First, learn more about toxic masculinity, how it appears in our culture and in ourselves. Second, define your own masculinity. You get to decide what masculinity means to you. It doesn't have to be in opposition to femininity. It can be in cooperation with it. Masculinity does not have to come at the expense of your own emotions, and it does not need to be defended with violence. Listen to survivors' stories and believe them. Practice things like affirmative sexual consent, as well as listening to and affirming your own emotions. We'll never be perfect, but we can learn to be better every day. Finally, hold others accountable. When you see toxic behavior perpetrated by your family, friends, bros, coworkers, anyone, speak up. Working together, we can reshape what masculinity means in today's world.